Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Property and Investor Podcast. Obviously, you know me as your host, Paul Lanfear. Now, you will have noticed that this series of podcasts is a little bit different to some of the other podcasts we're doing. These are the Inner Circle All Stars, and these are people who I've had the absolute privilege and honor of working with for the last 12 months. And I'm thrilled to add to that list today's guest, which is Sean. Sean, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Yeah, really happy to be here, Paul. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, by way of introduction, do you want to tell the good people, who you are, what your business is, and a little bit about you?
So my name is Sean Dirrane. My day-to-day business is called Cosmos Engagement Limited. Essentially, we work in the education sector. So we have a couple of services, so research and training, and we've also built out some technology products to support the sector to achieve better outcomes with students. And I also have an interest in investment, and I have a small portfolio of property also.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, tell us a little bit about where you were when you joined the program. Tell us about the challenges, problems that you're encountering, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think when I started, so I suppose that the easiest way to describe it was that I was busy. Probably in part, veering towards becoming a busy fool. And had a lot on my plate, so I was, I'm a the bit I didn't say in my introduction is that on top of that, I'm a husband and I'm a father. Two really important things in my life. Father to two children. One is soon to be two, and the other soon to be five. So they're quite young, and that brings some challenge in terms of the dynamic of that and work. And like I said, I'm married as well, and the business had been through an interesting phase of us probably, I think in hindsight, maybe me growing that business to a point in terms of the workforce and staff and scaling it in terms of kind of revenue and profitability and our offering generally. And I think a couple of things happened around that time, around 2022, when I realized that that wasn't what I wanted. I was kind of being led by this whole kind of narrative that, if your business isn't growing, it's dying, and, everybody should be trying to scale a business. And I think actually it wasn't right for me, but I was doing it. So that was going on. And then I also had another interesting dynamic because I was really looking at the structure of my week and where I put my time. So what I mean by that is looking at the balance of how much time I put into my business Cosmos and how much time I put into my investment interests. Um, so I've got a portfolio of properties, and I'm really looking at reviewing that to think, is property something I want to do? Is it something I want to stay in? Because you know better than anybody, Paul, there's lots of ways you can invest, and I think, property isn't the only way. So I think for me, it was really just looking at, I'm busy, and how do I balance all of this, all of these commitments between family, business, and investment? And I suppose, like, how do I find a bit of me in all of this rather than doing what's expected of you? I think it's looking at yourself and thinking, well, actually, forget about what's expected of you, but what's right for you. So yeah, that's where I was at the start. So there's quite a bit, yeah, quite a bit going on there, as you can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of what's interesting about you is you've got a very broad view. So obviously you are very much an entrepreneur in the context of the current business. Obviously you've mentioned your investment properties, but a lot of the conversations that we've had, which I've really enjoyed, have been totally outside of that in terms of looking at like talking about completely different investments and completely different investment models and strategies and that kind of thing. And I think yeah, as you well know, like I am not, I think there are so many other opportunities out there in terms of investments. Property is just one of like a huge range. And and to the extent I'm reasonably neutral on it, I think if people love it and if they think that's their path, then definitely. But I think if they want to do other things, there are equally other exciting things out there as well.
Mm.
Um, and it's obviously good for me to hear that one of your objectives was I suppose to paraphrase, like to prioritize yourself and your own outcomes, which I think is important, really important, particularly with all the, challenges you've got. So, or responsibilities at least. So
Yeah.
how did it help? What was so how did Inner Circle help? What did you see? What were your insights? How have things progressed?
I just echo what you said around those conversations. I think, yeah, I think I can't remember how you would describe yourself, but there's a word before open-minded. I can't remember the word you normally.
Radically open-minded.
Radically. Oh, I love that term. Yeah, I think I agree. You are radically open-minded. I think I am as well. And we tend to we had some of those conversations were so positive because we were both coming at it with no agenda and wildly open-minded. So yeah, I echo that. But yeah, to your question, I think how did it help? I think it helped in lots of ways. And there's probably not enough time today to go through all of them. But I think for me, it helped me to focus. I think um, what I think one of the things I'll come on to is that I realized through doing the program and the wealth dynamics profile is that, I'm a creator primarily, but I'm also quite balanced across all of the other dimensions as well. That may not make sense to your listeners if they've not done the wealth dynamics, but for the purpose of this conversation, I'm quite a creative person. And I think at times, that gets me in a bit of trouble because I'm happy to go in and start. I describe the way I would describe myself in my business when we had, when we were at like 8 to 10 staff, is I would go in with the stick and the plate, the little, I would spin them and I would hand it over to somebody, spin another one, hand it over, and I'd
Yeah.
just be spinning a lot of plates. And then for the plates not fall, I would have to hand it over to somebody because I'm just good at getting the plate spinning, and that's the
Mhm.
creative part. Um,
Mhm.
I tend to then lose interest to a degree with the things that then follow. So I suppose I was getting myself in a bit of bother because I was, excuse me, busy with family, trying to be a good husband. I have to talk to my wife about that. Trying to be a good father to two children, trying to be a good MD. It's the business is, an SME, so we're a small business, so it's a bit, the hustle there, doing the work, and then getting really caught up in the investment stuff. So I think I just needed to focus, as you call it, Paul, like the one thing, like what's the one thing? So that Inner Circle massively helped me with that. And I know again, you talk about community is key, and in some of your comms, and I would echo that. We had like an awesome group of people, wonderful group, and I think with that, this comes two things: is that you really want to be around people who are like-minded, people who are in business, investment, who you can talk to, you're on the same page, you speak that language. It doesn't matter if it's a different business or a different investment strategy. You need to be around people like that. And I think that was missing in my life because, I've got absolutely nothing against people who work, a day job. I did that before starting the business. And if you absolutely love your job, then, often 9 times out of 10 business isn't for you.
Mhm.
But it in business it can be lonely, and it's hard to then have those business conversations with friends and family who are not in business. Sometimes I found that for me personally, so that was a huge benefit. And then accountability, like massively accountable, like you weren't hiding anywhere. And
Mhm.
I think when you go through your good patches in business and your good quarters and the good phase of the business, everything's easy. But in the cold winter months, Q3, maybe Q4, when you're just like, some days are just not, it's not your day or your week. We all have them. Well, it will be somebody else's week.
Yeah.
It will be somebody else's week, and it'll be their time to shine, and they just pull you through. So I think those are a couple of the big things. And I think the third thing, again, key one here, which I touched on, was what I don't want to say the biggest, but certainly one of the biggest was the work we did based on the wealth dynamics, the Roger Hamilton work, a lot around kind of flow state, how you structure your week, understanding your personality profile and how you apply that um, to life and work. And I
Mhm.
think like credit to you, Paul. Like your skill in all of that, and I don't think you'll mind me saying you're not called Roger Hamilton, so you didn't develop that.
Mhm.
Your skill in all of this was like applying it, like the application, and like what that was like sewn through so many of the sessions, and it really just brought it to the forefront and made me understand myself, my profile, how I work, how I like to work. Because prior to that, they were just suspicions. Like,
Mhm.
that thing about the plate was like, well, I just spin plates and hand them over. But there was nothing to underpin it. Or I think in my business that rather than do meetings every day, we should just focus on having a day of meetings and then a day of creative and a day of working on tasks. I had the suspicion, but there was nothing to underpin it. So I think, whilst I love the program, I think that was some of your greatest work, bringing
Mhm.
that out and sewing it through. Not all of the program, but I know we referenced it a few times in a few of the sessions.
Mhm. Well,
Um,
obviously, I'm very pleased to hear that, and I mean that like everything. Yeah, you probably remember me saying this, but if I'm talking about something or I'm trying to get us to focus on something, it means it's something that I've failed at and that I have therefore put in 1,000 hours to not fail at and to improve. And that comes from, having years and I don't mind admitting it, like being that busy fool, like riding that edge of burnout year after year after year, trying to
mm,
push the horses faster.
mm,
Whereas what I've discovered, having put in 1,000 hours of study, is that it's about actually finding, as you say, that flow state.
mm,
And you, I like the analogy you used about like kind of sewing the thread. Because I think you will have heard you will have heard people say in the age of the internet, information is free, and
mm,
that is true for me that there is too much information, and what I really need help with is day-to-day implementation of it. So I can hear what
mm.
stuff that makes sense, but I think the actual struggle is like, well, how do I actually do it? So like let's let's stop writing on the whiteboard. Let's stop sending me videos on it. Like, how do I actually implement it in my day to day? And I think that for me is where a little bit of the magic happens. And I have to say, in terms of you guys as a group as well, um, it's a pleasure to see those relationships bond and form. And I can, without disclose, without breaching any confidences, I can cast my mind back to sessions where that there's people who people have been working really hard and they've been up against it. Because if you are pushing hard forwards, what that means is that you are dealing with a lot of rejection, a lot of failure, a lot of challenges. And so,
Mm,
some people will do quite understandably turn up, a little, they've been in the wars, and then what will happen is like two or three people turn up and they're just like blazing sunshine
mm.
because they've just had the killer week.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it becomes infectious. Like you finish the session and it's like, oh wow, the world is a good place, you know,
yeah.
and you're ready to chill out the weekend and then get down to it on Monday.
Yeah, it's like they've got this. Yeah, I know you're a surfer, but there's like this wave of positivity just cast
Mhm.
over you. Yeah, we had like our group are just amazing, like amazing people, like hugely positive, and all very different.
Yeah.
Very different backgrounds. No two people the same, and like all either to have full-time day jobs and investors or running businesses or have children and some of all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't just nobody sat around twiddling the thumbs until the inner
No
circle
way.
starts. But yeah, I think for me it'll be part of my kind of new year is to one of my goals is to stay in touch
Mhm.
with all of that group, and I've not spoke to them yet, but it won't happen in the first quarter. But I want to get a one-to-one, face-to-face, catch-up, walk, coffee, whatever, in with all of them because yeah, they're just fab people.
And
Um,
they'll love it. And I can assure you they'll be very receptive to that idea. And yeah, you'll be pushing an open door there. So I suppose like where are you now? How have things helped? How have things progressed? Yeah. bring us up to speed now.
Um, I think I was going to touch on something else about essentialism, but maybe we'll come back to that because I think that's an important. And that fact, I will touch on it because it's probably relevant for this question. Um,
Hmm.
I think for me, excuse me, I suppose one of the things was as I suppose I'm not really answering the question, so let's address that for a moment. I'm much
Okay.
clearer. Let's just get that off, right? I'm much clearer.
Okay.
But because I suppose the thing I was going to say is I'm a thinker, and lo and behold, I was thinking while I was trying to answer the question. So I think for me, one of the other kind of key things, and this will transition well into your question, was you kind of realize a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about yourself. And when you do the inner circle, it just cements it kind of it cements those thoughts and it's then underpinned by all of this other stuff that sits around it. So where I am at the moment is I read the essentialism book. I
Mhm.
probably should have read that sooner, to be honest, and you recommended it at the start of the program. Guess who read it at the end? um, so there's a lesson there. But I realized something that I have thought for a long time. um, I wouldn't have said I am an essentialist. I would have just said, I absolutely despise faff. So I'm like this person who, like, I really enjoy like efficiency. I really enjoy like outputs. I really enjoy results, but I
Mhm.
hate faff. And you know what I mean when I say faff. It's like,
Mhm.
it's all of the messing around and the inefficiencies and the doing too much and not getting results. Like that doesn't inspire me at all. I'm really driven on efficiencies and results, outputs, and like giving me as much time back to live my life as possible. One of my highest values is freedom. Um,
Mhm.
and I think, yeah, I learned a lot in the latter part around. I suppose I just learned I was an essentialist, and that's great for me because the penny dropped, and it's almost like I'm now armed with this understanding that I am an essentialist, and I'm also armed to take the next steps in my business and my investments. So when you think about the start of the program, trying to navigate family life, business, and investing, and what those next steps are, I'm now at a point where I understand who I am. I understand what lights me up and what makes me tick. And what I've now done is I'm aligning my business, the setup of my business, the systemization of the business. Um, Again, we've done a lot. We've just done our annual plan already. We did at the start of the year. We're also aligning like, right, we've got turnover targets, but what kind of work
Mhm.
so having a turnover target and a profitability target, but actually it's the bit in the middle. It's like, how do you achieve that? So we've already aligned the types of work we want to do and go after. And lo and behold, it's the not faffy stuff, the stuff
Mhm.
that's linked to essentialism and the stuff that I really like. So, and that's true for the investment stuff. I know we chatted a lot about different options
Mhm.
for investment, and I've made a decision on that also. So, long story less long is where am I now? I am much clearer, much more focused. Um, we understand we've not worked it out yet. We've done a lot of work in working out what's working for us in the business from a marketing perspective, from a services and product perspective, um, and we're clear what 2025 looks like. And I'm just excited then with all that in mind to then take next steps in terms of investing. So there's some sensible answer in there somewhere, but I think it's focused and clear about my next steps is the succinct bit.
Sean, it all makes a lot of sense.
Fantastic. It didn't make any sense to me.
No, it does, because you've got really, you're kind of a natural born entrepreneur. You
Very much.
know, and you always offer an enormous amount of value. I mean, in the brief conversation we had before we recorded the podcast, like I felt like I was having like a business consultation session. It was fantastic. I know I got a lot of value out of it, and I
But
think that is something that you definitely brought to Inner Circle as well, and people often would comment on that. Um, uh, yeah, so like all absolute credit to you. So I suppose the natural question is, what if someone is thinking about Inner Circle, what would you say to them?
Great question. I would say I'll say these two words and then we can close it off. I'd just say do it.
Okay.
I would say a few things. I would say definitely do it. Don't sit on the fence. And I look, this isn't about promotion for you. I suppose what I would say, and I think you might forget this. I missed out the first year. Do you remember?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there we go. Because I did sit on the fence. I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll come back to it. And I did. And guess what? Paul Lanfear had moved on with his life. He'd already had his cohort. So I
Mhm.
think like I think we know we've got good intuition about ourselves, about people, about programs, what's right and wrong for us. I think by and large, by the time people come to talk to you, they know whether they want to do it or not. And I would just say, don't sit on the fence, do it. But I'd also give some practical advice, some of which I didn't always do on the program.
Mhm.
And that would be something you said to me is to almost like take the action steps in real time.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it people won't understand how the program is, you know, like you're a master in the way that you've carefully crafted the program, Paul. Um, like when you do an individual session or an individual element, you might be forgiven for thinking, great, that's a standalone piece, right? We'll move on to the next. But actually, that's just that's just all like individual notes. Then that's music
Mhm.
individually, but it doesn't really play the song.
Mhm.
And when you get to the end or past each quarter, or certainly by the end, you realize that all of those notes brought together just creates this beautiful song. And it's just
Mhm.
this beautiful music. It's this great song, and you can hear it. It works. You understand it, and that's to do with the way you've structured it and crafted it. Um, and I would also say that I'm a part of what I used to do and still do in the business is, we have a training arm, we have a facilitation arm.
Mhm.
I've been out delivering training for years, and I've seen how the good, the bad, I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and I think um, what people tend to do when they train and facilitate is one of two things. Is one, most people, it's an ego flex. Look at how much I know. And I work with young people in schools and colleges, so that doesn't go down too well. It's not the right approach. It's not an ego flex and it's not look how much I know. You absolutely don't do that. And I think the other thing, I was on a call the other day. I won't mention who it is. I'll talk to you off air about it. Or, somebody uh, and this person's been in the game a long time. I've never been to a webinar or a kind of a training session for this person. I was like, this guy's been training for 20 odd years. Because the reason is because what they were doing is just throwing information at you. I
Mhm.
mean, like throwing it,
Mhm.
like reaching through and just throwing the information down your throat. And I'm like, that's not how you train somebody.
Mhm.
So I think credit to you in the way that you crafted the program, the way it all sits together and it plays this beautiful song. That there's no ego flex, and I love your rule, like no egos, so like leave egos at the door. And the way you convey information and get that across, I think is wonderful. So yeah, there's a lot more to say, so I'm going to move on. But that for you is a big no. I think you've done an amazing job there.
Oh, well, obviously, I'm really delighted to hear that, and it means a lot as well because this is the industry you're in, so that you are a specialist in training, education, developing like the potential of human beings. So that is obviously to not to overdo your metaphor, but it is music to my ears, and I'm flattered as well that you see as well the compounding and the progression. And I am at pains to explain to this at the beginning, but I appreciate not everything always lands because we've all got so much on. But it is, as you described, like take every step as it comes, implement the step, and what you'll notice is that it will compound into the next step and the next step and the next step. And occasionally, I have people who want to kind of jump to step eight. And I say, look, it's just not going to work. If we start talking about step eight now, um, you'll be spinning your wheels all year long. So let's just take it as it comes. And
Yeah.
in terms of implementation, I'm a realist. So I think if someone implements 20% of what we do in roughly the order we do it, all
Yeah.
be well. Like I would, that's where I would set the bar. And anything more than 20% will be absolutely phenomenal. But you've got to meet people where they are. People have got, you've got business, you've got family, you've got kids, you've got, in some instances, people are looking after their parents, they're
Mm.
looking after all kinds, they're doing a lot in the world. But anyway, thank
Yeah.
you, Sean, because I
No.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. I think, yeah, I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it, but I think just on a couple of things you mentioned there around the compounding effect. Obviously, that's an investment term. Suppose in my world of like working with students, real hard to reach young people who are just don't engage in education and mainstream education, who are probably at risk of, entering like alternative provision, as in outside of mainstream school.
Mhm,
These I've kind of earned my stripes by working with hard to reach young men because they are just like the hardest to engage. Just it's just is what it is. And I think the thing that we talk about in our world, in my world, is like is about it's like we call it like progressive and sustained.
mhm,
So this way you have success is not by just doing a one-off hit. So you have all these people who come in and it's like, I'm a motivational speaker and I'm going to talk to your students and turn their lives around. Well, you might have had some impact, but it's just a one-off and that doesn't really work. I know that doesn't work in and of itself. It's fleeting, it's short term. So we need to do something progressive and we need to do something sustained, which means we have multiple touch points. And I think, yes, that relates to my world, but how it relates to the inner circle is it's a 12-month program.
mhm,
And we know that you need 6 months to be able to make something like habitual. You need to create a habit, you need at least 6 months.
mhm,
So you've got 12 months on Inner Circle. And the other thing you mentioned is around the busyness and people. Like we all lead busy lives. And I
mhm.
think I'm going to coin your term here, Paul, the golden nugget. Um, everyone uses that word now on Inner
Yeah.
Circle. The golden nugget is that yes, but because we're so busy, you need an extra level of accountability.
Mhm,
And I think these are turn up in online people. So I think when you're busy, you need an extra layer of accountability. And that means that you don't want to just be watching a record. You want to actually be in the physical presence of people. And there's a blend of the sessions are online with people.
mhm,
Um, Obviously, you have meetups, you have the walks, people, and then we have
mhm.
the WhatsApp group. So it's that blend as well, I think, of the way it works, I think is another positive. Uh,
Oh,
so yeah, but I've got a few other things if you've got time. I think just
yeah, far away.
wish really is I think you'll just get a lot of value from the program. I think huge value. Like I know that the whole group got an abundance of value, but I would say my advice is that it's a classic, isn't it? Like you'll get out of it, and you only get out what you put in,
Mhm,
and everybody works in a slightly different way, but just a note for you is, Paul, I am gonna the way I work, what I'll do at the start of the new year, I'll go back over all of that content. I know it
mhm,
sounds a bit um, unorthodox, but the way I work is we've done the inner circle. I'll go back over all that content, notes, and where I've not implemented, I'll start to implement them in 2025. So yeah, I think the community I mentioned, was great. I definitely want to stay in touch. And I think if I've not mentioned enough positives about you, Paul, I think outside of the training and the inner circle program, I think you are a brilliant mentor
mhm,
because I think the two things are different. The program is information and the training element and how you convey that. But I think there's another layer of you as a person, as a mentor. And I think you've got this. I think you're just a fantastic listener, um, which is quite a difficult thing to do. People think it's easy to listen, but there's listening and then there's active listening, and
mhm.
we all know that most people are waiting to just you for a pause so they can jump in and talk, and I don't get that with you. Probably with me sometimes, but don't get that with you. And I think yeah, that's a really important element, and I think anybody who knows you will know that you're like extremely knowledgeable. You've definitely earned your stripes, and you've got the scars to show that and prove that you've earned the stripes. So, yeah, I think yeah, I can't recommend you as a person and the program enough. I think I've done a couple of other things as well, other programs, accelerator programs, masterminds. Um, but hands down, this has been the best thing I've ever done. So yeah, appreciate you and appreciate your time and appreciate the program. So thank you very much.
Oh, Sean, I don't know what to say. So I'm not going to say anything other than, yeah, obviously, thank you.
Mm.
Thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. I'm going to just leave it there. I'm going to let, I think, yeah, I really appreciate everything you've said. I appreciate the place it's coming from as well. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure spending this year with you. And I'm looking forward to us staying in touch and seeing where the world takes us.
Yeah, amazing.
Amazing. Well,
Uh,
there you have it. So, Sean, if these good people are interested in connecting with you, learning a bit more about your business and all the stuff that you're doing, where should we send them?
yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, open to conversations, chats, anything investment or specifically related to Cosmos, my business. Mainly, you can be found on LinkedIn. That's the kind of the main social platform I use. So Sean Dirrane, spell it, or would it be in some notes, Paul?
I'll
Or
pop it. I'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes for you.
so LinkedIn would be good. Website, so Cosmos, COSMOS Ltd.uk. Have a look at all the wonderful things we're doing.
Mhm.
Or just email. You can email, reach out to me directly. So yeah, LinkedIn, website, or email. That'd be great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
So that was Sean, ladies and gentlemen. That was a lot of fun. It felt like it was Sean's podcast, and it quite rightly should have been. So if what has resonated with you for speaking to Sean, obviously reach out to Sean. Sean's got some really fantastic stuff going on. He's a good guy. Get in touch with him. If you're interested in a circle, probably the best thing to do is come and meet me at a breakfast, come and meet the community, meet the people, see what you make of it all. Falling short of that, direct message me and we can have a chat. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Keep well and speak soon. Thank you very much.